Hi, and thank you for tuning in to Noir Histoire. I'm Natasha, and this is the final episode in a two-part series about the Greenwood District and Tulsa Race Massacre. I recommend starting with the first episode to get some context about Greenwood and how it was established. During Reconstruction, lynchings had emerged as a particularly gruesome form of racial terror. Originally founded in 1865, the Ku Klux Klan had experienced a lull in popularity, but had a large-scale revival in 1915, gaining a foothold in Oklahoma. A few years later, during the summer of 1919, racial tensions exploded in the form of anti-black riots that swept the country, including Oklahoma. These racial conflicts gave some indication of the violence that simmered just beneath the surface of Tulsa society. The powder keg exploded on May 31, 1921, and unleashed a torrential wave of violence that tore through the all-black Greenwood District, leaving a trail of murdered black people as well as destroyed homes and businesses in its wake. The spark was lit a few days earlier in an elevator when a black teenage boy, Dick Rowland, came into contact with a white teenage girl, Sarah Page. The exact details vary, but it's believed that Rowland stepped on the foot of Page, who reacted by letting out a scream, which sent Rowland running off the elevator. Rowland was arrested and held by the sheriff at the local courthouse. The charges against him would eventually be dropped. But Tulsa's mainstream newspapers ran an incendiary story that framed the incident as an attempted rape. Looking for an excuse to utilize violence, a white mob gathered at the courthouse and demanded they be allowed to carry out vigilante justice. The police did not hand over Rowland, but they failed to disperse the crowd while it was still manageable, which allowed it to grow in size. Upon hearing of the potential lynching, a group of approximately 25 armed black men showed up to assist with protecting Rowland, but were turned away. By the time a larger group of about 75 black men returned, the white mob had grown to an estimated size of 1,500. Members of the two groups exchanged words and shots were fired. Some members of the mob were already armed with weapons, while others stole weapons and ammunition. After the group of armed black men retreated to Greenwood, the mob descended on the neighborhood and began wreaking havoc. The police had further escalated the situation by deputizing and arming some members of the rowdy white mob. Groups of armed white men indiscriminately opened fire on black people on the street, killing many on sight. They forced their way into homes, looting possessions that they coveted in the belief that they were more deserving than the black owners. Homes, businesses, and other establishments were destroyed, with some burned to the ground or otherwise demolished. Despite clearly being in a neighborhood that was not theirs, the white mob was not ordered to disperse or return home. Instead, for 2 days, the mob was given free rein to plunder and pillage with no regard for black lives or property ownership rights. Some survivors reported that planes flew overhead spraying bullets and dropping explosive devices containing kerosene or turpentine on Greenwood. There were also accounts of dead black people being loaded onto trains, dumped into the river, and buried in mass graves. When the National Guard arrived, they helped put out fires, but also contributed to the tumult by joining the local police in arresting Greenwood's black residents and holding them in internment camps. The local and state government did not provide any meaningful intervention to rescue black residents or protect property during the massacre. They also didn't provide any meaningful assistance once it ended. Greenwood was left a smoldering ruin with a devastated black population due to its residents having been murdered, unjustly detained, or fleeing to save their lives. The NAACP, American Red Cross, churches, and some private white Tulsa citizens assisted with arranging short-term emergency housing and resources. As news of the massacre spread, the local government declined more long-term assistance that was offered by outside sources, leaving Greenwood's residents with the tremendous responsibility of rebuilding. The Red Cross organized relief efforts that took place over several months, during which time the Red Cross director recorded accounts of the incident and its aftermath. Official government records initially reported 36 casualties, but the death toll was later increased to an estimate of 100 to 300 people. Approximately 9,000 black residents were left homeless, and the district suffered losses of $1.8 million, $26 million in today's money. This should come as no surprise because leveling Greenwood and running off many of its residents was a way of clearing a path for external forces who hoped to take over the district. Within days, property owners found themselves fending off white would-be profiteers who made insultingly low-ball offers as part of their plan to carve up and repurpose the land for expansion of Tulsa business interests. In the aftermath, the incident was initially referred to as a riot rather than a massacre, in part due to it being a racial conflict. But some sources believe this is also because insurance companies would not have been liable for paying claims resulting from property damage during a riot versus during a massacre. No one was ever charged with or convicted of participating in the massacre. The local mainstream press, Police and government began working to spin the story and suppress the truth about what had taken place. They went so far as to remove information and articles about the massacre from archives. Official reports provided a relatively low estimate of the number of lives lost. Local news articles fixated on the questionable story of the attempted rape and placed the blame on Greenwood's black population and rumors of a black uprising. They ignored the culpability of racist Tulsans who were motivated by feelings of inferiority, jealousy, and covetousness. For decades, the event was not included in Oklahoma's textbooks or curriculum. Yet the memory of the Tulsa Race Massacre remained vividly imprinted on the minds of its black survivors. It took several decades, but renewed attention in the Tulsa Race Massacre eventually led to in-depth scholarly investigations. In 1997, the state government created the Race Riot Commission, later renamed the Race Massacre Commission, to investigate, and the group released a report in 2001. The report provided updated estimates of deaths and the number of residents displaced by the massacre. It also provided several recommendations, such as a limited excavation at a particular site to clarify if a mass grave was present, and reparations to survivors and their descendants. Thus far, none of the recommendations have been carried out. Greenwood was eventually rebuilt, but lacked its earlier shine and lost even more of its identity with the end of legal segregation in the 1960s, so with the introduction of integration. As with many other historically black neighborhoods, the Greenwood District was affected by urban redevelopment in the 1960s and 70s, and in more recent years is becoming a victim of gentrification. Virtually none of the original Greenwood survives, and much of the rebuilt Greenwood has been redeveloped. But a block of land was purchased and preserved by Edward Goodwin Sr. and is now home to the Greenwood Cultural Center, which primarily houses exhibits about the history of Greenwood District. Thanks for tuning in. Show notes are available on the Noir Histoire website via the link in the episode description. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the thumbs up button. You can also share it online, on social media, or with someone you think might enjoy the episode. Doing this will help other people find the show, which helps it to grow. If you aren't already subscribed to the Noir Histoire YouTube channel, I hope you subscribe now and return to get motivated, get inspired, and get more stories of Black history made and in the making. Until next time, take care.